What is a hyperwheel? To me, a hyperwheel is a EUC that can push the limits of what's possible on this kind of machine. It's a machine where you notice that whatever you throw at it, it does it with ease and headroom. And suddenly, it is not the limit anymore. You are.
Neki kurna stary.
But a hyperwheel is not only that. The Begode Blitz has the power and the performance, but also the electronics and hardware to go along with it. So you can customize its rides to its most precise setting that you as a rider want, but you also have the safety to back it up and the water resistance. But a hyperwheel also needs to be durable in order to endure the crashes that come with pushing the limit of the sport. And the Begode Blitz delivers that with a fiberglass reinforced nylon that makes sure that this product won't fall into pieces upon the first impact. Truly, for the first weeks as I'm testing this wheel, and whatever I've been throwing at it, I have been just flabbergasted. And in today's video, I'll tell you about all of the pros and also cons of this wheel. So let me tell you more about it. So first up, huge thanks to Begode for providing me this wheel for testing purposes and also for me to keep. This is how I'm able to do reviews of all of those wheels and give you a real user perspective on what it's like to ride them, what it's like to own them, what can go right and what can go wrong. And if you want to buy a wheel like this or any other wheel in Europe, feel free to check out OneRide. That's my partner for Europe-wide sales. And there's also a discount code WRONGWAY if you want to have an additional 5% off. Why wouldn't you want to have a 5% off if you are buying something? They check the wheels before they ship them out. So yeah, one love, one ride. Check them out if you want to get an EUC in Europe. And this is sort of my first impressions review. There will be a bigger and longer review coming up later. I've put 550 kilometers on this wheel, testing it in all kinds of circumstances, but as said, be on the lookout for the long-term review in order to see if anything changed after this initial time of testing this wheel. First up, we'll go through the specs of this wheel, and then I'll tell you everything I noticed about the ride, about the machine itself. We'll talk about all of those features and components going from bottom to the top of the Begode Blitz. So the datasheet is also something that you can look up on the OneRide site. Of course, those are just numbers. I will tell you right away also what those numbers mean in real-world scenarios. Starting with the top speed. It's listed at 85 kilometers an hour, but this wheel is extremely fast. I was talking with my friend Psycho from Spain, by the way. Subscribe to him, check out his Instagram, follow him. He's a great rider, great person. And he reached a top speed of 100 kilometers an hour on this wheel. So one thing that is for certain, this wheel has a lot of headroom, but you also can set up various alarms and safety nets in order to prevent this wheel from overpowering. More on that in the app section later. The motor power is 3.5 kilowatts. All I can tell you, this wheel just blew me right out of the park because I thought with this new C32 motor, it will have less torque than prior C38 motor powered Begode wheels. If that's said correctly, I hope it is. But it doesn't only have the speed, it also has insane torque. You can go up 45-degree inclines on it without any issues. It's quite amazing what this wheel is capable of. Like, it can literally do small burnouts on standstill. It's crazy. The estimated range on the site is 120 kilometers. Now, I didn't do any range test on this wheel yet. It will really depend on how much you're pushing it, but I expect anywhere around 80 to 100, probably 90 to 100, or maybe even above kilometers of range on this wheel. That's what I'll be getting anyways. I'm around 80 kilograms heavy. And then you can charge it up with the stock charger in about, I guess it's 4 hours, something like that, 3-4 hours. But there's also a possibility to charge it at 20 amps, which means like a 40-minute charge time? Wow! The battery capacity is 2400 watt hours, and they're using high discharge, high capacity Samsung 50S cells. I was noticing when accelerating with this wheel, there is a very small battery sag. Those batteries are excellent for the use case of this wheel. When it comes to the tire size or wheel size, the tire on the outer edge is 20 inches big and the rim is 14 inches. But maybe the biggest and most important feature of this wheel or data set is the weight. Now, Begode went out of its way and made sure that this is the lightest performance wheel that is available right now on the market, weighing in at about 36 kilograms. This is the weight of the S22, and if you have been riding this wheel before, you can really notice the difference between the weight of 40 kilograms and 36. There's many lightness aspects I will talk about later, but all I can say for now, 36 kilos is the way to go. And with the smaller weight, it's just so much easier to jog around corners, to do off-road, to accelerate, to climb hills. You have just so much more control when you have less weight. And I'm astounded how they were able to achieve this while also having the durability in mind and the performance and the range. So I know, I'm just impressed by now. There will be some cons. I'll talk about cons, don't worry about it. But just right out of the gate, just the specs and the initial experience is completely insane. It's a HYPERWHEEL. And now let's get to all of the components going from bottom to the top of the wheel. Starting with the tire. Now, this wheel will come with different sets of tires. I got it with an off-road tire that also has a tube, but it's also possible to get it with a street tire, a wider one, 90 by 90. And that is also tubeless ready. So this is the first Begode wheel that I tested that is prepared to have a tubeless setup, and it also has the grooves in the rim in order for the tire and its bead to fit well. I can assure you that this is the straightest running tire that I've ever had on any wheel. Like usually they can bounce around a little if the rim doesn't have those beads or if the tire is just not well seated. This is just so straight. It's wow, it's crazy. It's not gay at all. I hope that was a good joke. Now, for most riders, if you just go around the city and you're not planning to do off-road, Begode is advertising this as a racing wheel. So I would suggest you to get the street tire then. It's a lot more maneuverable, it's quieter, it's a lot better for cornering. But for my particular use case, which is doing everything with a wheel, going upstairs, inclines, off-road, and also street riding, this tire has been performing really well and it's really grippy. One thing to keep in mind is that you need to lean more with this tire in order to turn, so it's more possible to clip the pedals, and it takes some time to get used to how, you know, the balance of the wheel shifts. But this tire is the choice that I will get in order to do some off-roading as well. For me, this is not a racing wheel, this is a freaking hyper rally wheel. Begode was also saying that this rim is a lot more durable. Now, I didn't put it to the test yet. I didn't have any cracks. I don't have any dents. I was going upstairs and, you know, nothing wrong is happening. But allegedly, this rim is also more durable than the prior ones on Begode wheels. Moving up, we have the motor. And the motor is one of the great components of this EUC. And I really would like to say that some of the, you know, features are the features that make the wheel, but it's not really like that. This set of features is more than the sum of its parts, if that makes sense. All of them combined are great, but each one of them is also awesome too. Okay, I'm raving too much, but you know me, I'll tell about the bad stuff too. So the C32 motor was something that I was really worried about, because on prior Gotway Begode wheels, if you had a high-speed motor, this would mean that you don't have so much torque and the wheel would dip and you wouldn't have just the power to back up your lean. And with the Blitz, this is not the case. This almost feels like you're shifting into the second gear and you have like twice the power. It's literally crazy how much you can achieve with this. So at first, once you get on this wheel, you might be thinking that you have less power just because you kicked sort of into the second gear because of the C32 motor. But once you leave in even more, and if you push even more, it never gives out. It will start to literally wheel spin going up a hill instead of giving up. It's really crazy. And because of this C32 narrower motor, it also means that this motor is lighter along with the rim. So it is actually 1.5 kilograms lighter than on the ET Max. And this gives you a lot more control, a lot less inertia in the turns. This really feels like you can just throw it around, and the light motor is definitely part of the equation. We also have a cylindrical seal on this wheel, which means that you won't have, hopefully, any issues with the bearings of this wheel. So if you were worried that the C32 motor will not be enough on the Begode Blitz, think again, because it has both. It has the torque and it has the top speed. Yeah, the free spin speed is around, what, like 150, 140? I actually need to check it. I never checked it. I just went fast. Of course, if it was safe to do so. And yeah, it climbs literally up any hill. Wow. Moving up, we have a new design of Begode pedals. Now, initially, I wasn't so excited about them because they have this cutout here, and the cutout still does annoy me. I think that a pedal without this cutout would be a lot better, just a lot more ergonomic, but I can live with that. The pins are super long and they are very grippy. They really hold you in place, and this is another example how a EUC company can make proper pedals out of the box. Veteran. The pedals are also angle adjustable. I didn't bother to do any changes of that yet, but you can do those changes. But sadly, they are not height adjustable. I guess because Begode just labels it as a racing wheel, they didn't do a pedal height adjustment. But I think it would be actually very helpful for this wheel. For usual scenarios, going around a city, going around a track, even going off-road, it is fine. But once the suspension compresses a lot, you can actually clip the pedals quite easily if you know how to do that. So sometimes when I was going at speed, there's quite a bit of marks you can see on the pedals here. I wish there would be higher up settings for the pedal height, but even with that said, as they are here, it's not a deal breaker. It's not, you know, really dangerous. Just something to keep in mind if you're doing steep inclines, if you're doing jumps, if you're doing fast cornering, especially on this off-road tire, you might scrape the pedals a bit. You can also, of course, adjust it with the suspension that I'll talk about later, but with the settings I'm using, I just have this in the back of my mind. I can actually clip the pedals with the wheel because there's just a bit of sag on the suspension. So even with a similar height of pedals to the Lynx, it is still a bit more possible to clip them. Now going over to the front here, we have those plastic see-through elements on this wheel. I guess these can make an impression of this wheel being not so sturdily built. These are, you know, I guess these are not the strongest bumpers ever, especially the ones here on the bottom. I don't think that's the fiberglass reinforced nylon. It's just sort of like a see-through panel that makes the LEDs look even cooler. And by the way, the LEDs are super cool. I guess they will make it a bit more tricky to disassemble the wheel because there's plenty of screws here on the side that you need to take out. And additionally, the plastic here from the inside doesn't hold all that well, like it moves around a bit. And sometimes when I was doing off-road, it would like poke out into the tire. Now, probably this is like a first batch issue or something. Maybe they'll work out the kinks in the future, but that's just something I needed to tell you about. These plastic elements, although they look really cool, especially in the night, could be slightly improved, especially the ones here looking from the middle, in order to have a bit more durability and robustness on the wheel. In the back, we also get a brand new design of a kickstand, and it's also made with this fiberglass reinforced nylon. And it's awesome because it's not only light, it has several perforations from the inside. It's also not in the way when you're doing jumps or heavy off-roading. So while on the Lynx, I had to detach the kickstand in order to do some more performance-oriented riding, with this one I don't have to. It's not the most sturdy one, therefore, but it doesn't get in the way of you pushing the wheel around because it's quite narrow, and it's also not getting in the way when you're doing even very steep jumps. So when it comes to the kickstand, I actually like it a lot. Now, when you look at the side of the wheel, those are the battery cases, and they are also, oh my God, come on, Velcro. That's some strong ass Velcro. Can I even like remove it? Come on, boom. So looking at the side of the wheel, you can notice that it's a flat surface, which is awesome. And they also went out of the way to extend this part a little bit further to the back in order for you to have a bit more surface area. Please don't fall. But I didn't get any pads whatsoever stock. Like usually I get some sort of pads with a Begode wheel, but here No. So I don't really mind that at all because, you know, many people just choose to go aftermarket with their pads anyway, like these power knobs. This is a kinetic top pad, but those are power knobs. So I don't really mind that all that much, but I would really like to have this surface area a bit further to the back because I still need to use a fairing plate in order to have my favorite setup on those pads. I believe the shell is made out of a magnesium alloy, so that is really cool. And the batteries inside are also shrink wrapped. I believe it's even 2 layers of plastic that protects the battery from water ingress. And the whole EUC has a IP67 rating. Now, Begode sent me even the certificates of those tests. Now, I wouldn't go out of my way and try to, test if this wheel can be actually submerged. But when it comes to experiences that I've heard of from various riders, the batteries usually always stay safe, even if the wheel, by accident of course, is submerged. And when it comes to the board, I think it's safe to use in rain, even torrential downpour. But I wouldn't go as far as saying as to, just ride it through deep puddles, ride it through the river. No, it's good to have this IP67 rating that Begode provides, but I definitely wouldn't be putting this to the test. Begode also learned a lesson on mudguards. Who would have thought the company that was the most reluctant to have a good mudguard finally made one? So here we have one made out of plastic that looks kind of like carbon. I don't think it's a carbon mudguard. It doesn't look like it's a proper weave. But even this plastic one, it's long in the back. It's long enough in the front. That's what she said. It's just good. When you'll be riding in rain, I don't believe there will be any water splashing in from the back on top of you. So finally, your ass will be dry when riding a Begode wheel in the rain. By the way, I also wanted to give a shout out to Albert Kua from 2 Cells 1 Pack. He has been working relentlessly with Begode to develop this wheel, and we can attribute a lot of the technological advances on this wheel thanks to him. So type in the comments, thanks Albert, if you appreciate all of the things that have been done on the Begode Blitz. Now we will turn ourselves to the back of the wheel. And here we have the suspension mechanism. Now, with the Begode Blitz, it's something that is kind of similar to what we had before on the T4, on the Master, on the Extreme, but improved. And this is really good to have those new generations where they learn lessons and then they can improve the system once again. So I'll talk a bit more about suspension because it's quite an important part. First up, let's talk about suspension travel. And I've been using this wheel just with the 100mm suspension travel for now. I didn't disassemble it, but you can unlock the maximum travel of 130mm if you remove a block that is here behind the pedal. There's also a quick guide and video of Begode of how to do it. Now, I will try it out in the future, but even with the 100mm option, I was pleasantly surprised by how comfortable and how universal this suspension is. So it uses the usual dry lubrication setup of the sliders with graphite inserts. When it comes to the smoothness of the suspension, it will not be ever as smooth as the suspension on Veteran. There, the suspension is just so quick to react. It is a couch. It's the most comfortable setup you can get for longer rides when the suspension really needs to react quickly. Part of the issue is that in the Lynx we have a progressive suspension, and in the Begode Blitz it feels more linear. So this is a setup as it would be for my usual riding with the Lynx. You can see it moves around. And it would bottom out on most bigger things that I would do, but on the Blitz with around 180 psi, it doesn't even move at all. So I can lower the pressure here, and then it will start moving. Let me show it to you really quick. So now I drop the pressure to around 120 psi. It does move now. Don't mind the sound. It's just those things here. They need some grease, just some sand got into the linkage bolts, but it does move now. But it means that it won't be as good anymore for those jumps. So it requires a bit of fiddling here to adjust the suspension in a way that you would like. Essentially, this chamber on the left is the main chamber, which is the sort of global pressure of the damper. And then with the right chamber, you adjust how quickly the rebound works or how strong it is. So if you have it at 50 psi, it will go up slower or like less strong and your pedals will be lower. and at 100 psi they will be higher. So out of the box, it's way easier to make the veteran links a lot more comfortable, and yet still with the less progressive suspension, like you can adjust the Blitz to be more comfortable, but you'll still have a clunk when it fully extends. So let's take a listen. The clunk. You can remove it by adjusting the rebound here, so the suspension goes up slower. But yeah, I still prefer it for jumps because it doesn't bottom out, and in general it has just more travel and it's more adjustable. But for a casual rider, it's a lot easier to make the suspension that is at veteran a lot more comfortable, and probably for most people this is enough. And yeah, it requires less maintenance, and I didn't need to lubricate anything out of the box. This just works. But it also might just be something I need to check in the slider mechanism, because there's a bunch of screws there that I can tighten or loosen, or as said, grease in the geometry. This is the ET Max, by the way, and with the 1,300 pound shock, this even seems smoother at the top end, although this one does have a longer shock. So yeah, just a bummer that out of the box the Blitz wasn't just as smooth as, for example, this one. Oh, and with the lesser pressure here in this chamber, your pedals will be also lower. With less pressure in this chamber, again, the pedals will be lower, but it will be more comfortable. So you're always trading the blows a little bit, because on this top part of the suspension, it just doesn't move around so easily as the veteran suspension does. You can adjust the suspension to your weight. Now, if you're a heavier rider, pump it up to 250 psi. If you're a lighter rider, pump up the main chamber to 100 psi. So if you don't do many jumps, just ride with a lower pressure. And a great thing about the system is that you not only have the pressure to set up your ride, you also have two geometry settings, a stiffer one and a more comfortable one. The lower one is the more comfortable one, I believe. And you also have a compression and rebound dial in the back that you can twist in the back in order to change the feel of the ride. And this is just a game changer for me, especially the fact that I don't need any tools for it. So if I ride around the city just comfortably, I have the compression all the way out, and then it's quite a comfortable ride, and it's it eats up all of the bumps. And I also have the rebound all the way out in order for the suspension to work really quickly. And if I go on a pump track, if I want to do jumps, I just crank the compression knob in, and then it allows me to have more pop with the wheel. So the suspension doesn't compress in a jump or on a ramp, it just stays a bit more firm. So wherever you go, you just need to twist your knob a little bit, maybe a little bit more if you need a better setup. And then the ride will become better according to your needs. So I've come to use those two knobs a lot because it's a drastic change to the suspension and a really easy one in order to make the ride better according to my needs. I didn't notice any bottoming out, even going from a steep decline onto flat ground. It's whatever for it. That is where my links, for example, compresses and clunks. This doesn't clunk, this just has like a and it's all good. The suspension doesn't bottom out. So yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised with the suspension. It did start to squeak a little. But I believe it's just the geometry pieces here in the back. They just need some grease. I had the same issue on Extreme, and just a little bit of grease here in the back helps to not have any of those squeaking noises. They might sound quite terrible. But it's a very small issue. It's just sand or dust going into the mechanism here. It's not in the slider mechanism. Quick fix, but it would be cool if Begode right out of the gate would have either, you know, a proper bearing setup here in the back, or if they would grease it up before they ship the wheel out to customers. And we're still not done with the suspension yet. It is also a very firm setup. It's very precise. The tire doesn't go to the sides. Wherever you point this wheel, the suspension doesn't get in the way of precision. And this is something that is slightly annoying for me on veteran wheels, while on the Begode Blitz, especially also with a bridge in the middle between the suspension slider mechanisms, this is a surgical weapon. And again, wherever you point this wheel, it will go there. And this is amazing for, you know, doing racing, for doing off-road, doing jumps, because the machine just listens to you and you don't have those tolerances for something to go wrong. You're just, you know, you're focused and the wheel does what you want. So yeah, the suspension, a lot to talk about it, some small improvements with the grease here in the back. It isn't the smoothest one, but it's the best of all worlds if you want to combine, you know, comfortable riding and also performance-oriented riding. I need to add one more thing though. The suspension can have quite a bit of sag once you step on the wheel, so you can mitigate that by pumping up the pressure, by adding more compression. But with that said, with the same pedal height as the links and the travel being slightly lower, when the ride really compresses, the pedals are quite close to the ground. So yeah, again, I would like the pedals to have a higher setup in order to have just slightly better conditions, especially for off-road oriented riding, which this wheel technically wasn't designed for. But I think it will be tough to beat this wheel in off-road with any other heavier electric unicycle. Okay, now let's move on to the front light. And again, Begode has seen the light. It is actually a good light. Begode made a good light. Wow! We have a brand new setup here where you can also adjust where the light is pointing. It's very powerful actually. It seems to be almost as powerful as the Cyclope halos that I'm using on the veteran wheels, but it has a broader beam, which is awesome for, you know, all kinds of riding, for street riding, off-road, etc., etc. So it looks a bit funny because it's a circle. It literally looks like the Looney Tunes sort of, you know, cartoon light where, you know, an actor will just pop in once you like shine the light on the wall. But it works well. I thought it would be just, you know, not the best setup, but it's great. Probably it would be better, it would be just like a triangle, just like going out. But even with this circle-shaped beam, it's quite phenomenal. Like, I have nothing to complain about in terms of this front light. It also has a daytime running light, and of course the awesome LEDs here on the bottom do act as a daytime running light too. The only thing I would like to add here is a color setup, but I'm not sure whether those LED strips actually are RGB. So if they are, please add a setup to change the colors. If they're not, well, it's blue and that's it. It could be cooler to have just white. It might be just the plastic that makes them look blue, but I do think that they're blue. Luckily, it's just a pretty, you know, cool color, so I'm not too angry about that. You also finally have connectors to the front light, so you don't need to disconnect the light on the board. No, you finally have a, I believe, waterproof or water-resistant connector here, so you can exchange your light without getting access to the board. Really sweet. Now, the RGB is also here around the top cover of the wheel. It's really cool, it looks great in the night, but it's not the brightest in terms of a tail light. I think this wheel would really benefit from an actual tail light like we see on Veteran, like we see on the new InMotion V14, but we don't have that yet. Now, it's not like invisible in the night, but because of a lot of patterns in the back, like just sliding to the side with yellow, then it just blinks, then it just stays red, it's a bit of a confusing light. So in the future, Begode, just do what you did to the front light to the tail light as well. A good tail light is very important. Just look at the V14, you know, just steal whatever they chose and make it yours. Or just do something better, okay? While the ambient lighting is cool, the tail light does need improvement. Now further up, we have the top cover, which is just plastic.
Begode, Begode, sing with me. Begode, 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 Blitz.
And that's probably another area that I would like to see improved. Now, it is, you know, sort of protected by this fiberglass reinforced nylon piece all around and the CNC part here on the top. But at Veteran, we have 2 layers that protect the board, and I would like to see that at Begode too. At least, you know, 2 layers of plastic or just more layers that protect the motherboard both from impacts and from water ingress. And we also don't have any foam on the top here. It's just a cajon. So it is a pretty comfortable seat, although for a bony ass, it won't be all that comfortable. The Extreme had a very plush foam here on the top, and that is something that I'm missing on this wheel. I wish they will come back to that. We also have a new design of a trolley handle that is magnetically attaching here, but I still think it might pop out when you will crash. I don't really know. It's a pretty strong magnet. So the trolley handle is very small, but it's not the worst. I mean, it doesn't lock in place either, which is also annoying. But when I'm pushing this wheel around, I notice that it's a lot lighter. So while I go inside and I just push this wheel around, it's not the end of the world, especially that I can put my helmet here. Oh, I just need to show you that. Put my full face helmet in here through this trolley handle, and then it just doesn't go down by itself. It's not a bug, it's a feature. So yeah, it's not the most ergonomical one, but it's not terrible. It's kind of terrible, just. It's usable. But when they will make a newer wheel, or if they want to improve this with another batch, just make it lock here in place on the top. This would just help a lot to make this a little bit more usable. Now let's move on to this handle part here on the top. I do really like that both on the front here and in the back, the chassis sort of extends in front of the battery, so I can still lean my leg against this or this when I'm braking and going into turns, or accelerating and going into turns. But some people might find this handle a little bit in the way of their knees. But this really depends on the shape of your legs. For me, there was no issue at all, but you know, it depends on how tall you are, what shape your legs are, etc., etc. I really like the contour design here, which makes the wheel feel a lot smaller than it is, which is something that you can say very rarely. And on the top, you have a brand new display by Begode, which is one of the worst displays ever, honestly. Now, the idea is good to have a display, but the placement of it, the angle of it, the construction of it, the visibility of it are all pretty bad, if I can't lie. So when it's daytime, I pretty much can't see the screen at all, because not only is it very dim, it's also at an angle. So if you're looking from the front, you see it like tilting back, and yeah, you just can't see the screen at all. Now, in the night, I can see how fast I'm going, especially if I just like push the wheel in front of me. But this is honestly one of the worst designs of a screen that Begode has implemented since the days of the sideways RS screen back in the day. So yeah, the screen is just plain bad. I don't like it. I can't see my speed when I'm doing jumps or preparing for something. Yeah, it's just not good altogether. So I hope they will redesign it, or at least make it brighter. If it would be brighter, that would be already a huge step up, because you could at least see it in broad daylight. But still, it would need to be more in the front. It needs to be angled flat or even towards the rider to make it more visible. But yeah, it is what it is. The handle is also pretty far to the back, so when you're riding seated, it's almost like you have a crotch power pad. And I'm not really sure whether this is something that floats your boat. It does float mine. No, not really. So you can move around when you're riding seated on this big sort of surface area, but you're still like pretty close to this front handle. So I would really like this handle to be a bit more further to the front in order to provide a more comfortable seated ride experience without any humping. Below the top cover, we also have a GX 20-4 port like we usually get on Begode wheels, but now we have a screw out cover, and this is accessed as so. and then you spin it out, and then you can access the charge port. It's really conveniently placed because once the wheel is on a kickstand, it's very easy to access. But I don't like that the cables here are all in the way, especially in the way of the power button as well and the lift switch button. So it's cool that the buttons are there, but it's you need some getting used to in order to remember where they are, and you also need to like fiddle around in order not to like press the cables while you're at it. You also need to screw in the port for a bit of a time, so it's not the easiest thing to do once the wheel is not on a kickstand, because you need to grab it and then like spin it, and it just like takes some time in order to screw it in. But I still prefer this. This is the thing. Let me try that while looking at it at the same time. So yeah, the plastic cover is still better because it stays good for a longer time and durable. But yeah, just need some getting used to. The charger that comes with the wheel is still a very stock Begode charger, nothing advanced, nothing that you can change the amperage with. It's pretty quiet still. So it's not annoying to charge this wheel at home, but it's heavy and quite cumbersome and slow if you want to go for longer group rides and charge the wheel on the go. So yeah, I would like to see some improvement here. Maybe have a built-in charger. That's my dream in the end, but at least have something a bit quicker or smaller or lighter or something adjustable. Just give me something better than this. And if you do want to get something better, I have this pit zoom charger here, which is from 130 to like 168 or 170 volts. So with this charger, you can charge this wheel with 14 amps. It's 1.4 kilograms, and it has a touchscreen. So you can set up whatever amperage you want on your wheel. It's also pretty small. So yeah, it's a big difference, also in size. And here smaller is better, but it's also quite heavy at 1.4 kilograms. Still not the heaviest one. So I believe we are through with the specs here. Let me show you how adjustable and customizable this wheel is through the app. So part of the reason why I like this wheel so much is also the amount of customization options that you have in the app. Now on the main screen you don't see all that much. You have just the battery percentage, the temperature of the board. There's a bunch of parameters here on the bottom, like your phase current and your battery current, etc., total mileage. This is all usual stuff. And it is also not the newest app. In the newest app you'll also see the motor temperature. Yes, there's a motor temperature sensor on this wheel now too. Finally. First wheel ever by Begode that has a motor temperature sensor. Awesome. But again, this screen is not as important for me. You can also track your data. Never use that. There's some, there's some other screens here that I also do not use altogether, just this one. So this is the screen where you can set up your firmware. So here you can download your firmware. And this is really amazing because here Begode is really amazing with their software department. For example, initially I had an issue where the wheel was tilting back in the air while I was doing jumps. And then they were just like, okay, we'll send you new firmware. And here's the amount of test firmware that you can use. I mean, don't use them. They're just, if you're in contact with Begode. And they were able to just send me a patch within like 4 or 5 hours. Quite amazing of a experience. And here you can select your wheel. In this case, here we have the Blitz somewhere. Where is it? Here. And you can set up your newest firmware update. So this is really cool. But where the most amount of customization kicks in is here in the settings menu. So let me click here. Make sure that stays in focus. Here you have a plethora of options. First up, you can set up your mode. It's not a slider like on veteran. You have just soft, medium, and strong. In the strongest setting, this is the best for performance riding. The pedals stay flat and transform your lean directly into acceleration. Then you can set up your alarms. Now, once you first get this wheel, just turn off level 2 alarm. I don't know why Begode still has that. It's been here since like, I don't know, 5 or more years, basically since the MSX days or even earlier. They should altogether remove this feature. I don't like it at all. So then you can set up your tilt back speed, which is your maximum speed where the wheel will force you to lean back on it. I just set it to 90. I don't go so fast anyway. You can set up your PWM alarm. So when this power threshold is reached, according to the speed, according to the power draw of the control board, it will beep at you and inform you that you are using too much power on the wheel. And this is working really consistently. I was trying to go up steep inclines, and you know, if the wheel just loses traction, then it would beep too. It will beep when you overpower it. It's a good setup. Or I was going also like 65 kilometers an hour, then it would start beep at a lower battery. The alarm system works well. I had the magnetic field weakening turned off, so I could probably go faster even with the battery state I had. And so if you want to go really fast on the wheel, just crank it up to 9, and then it will enable field weakening, which essentially just makes the wheel go faster with a bigger power draw. As simple as that. I don't want to go too much in depth into that. You can adjust how much you can tilt the wheel to the side before it turns off. So if you go to a pump track, I even sometimes have it at 85 or 80, just to make sure that I don't fall due to the angle cutout. I did once fall on a pump track at like 25 kilometers an hour due to the sideways lean cutout. I forgot to turn it on. But what I wanted to show you is that this is the only scratch it got, and it also hurt the screen. And this is just the only damage it took. So if you think that the screen will like bust right away if you fall, well, wasn't it the case with me, but probably with a more unfortunate fall, it might. Now, if you go just around the city, I would leave it like 55, maybe 60. I wish there would be a 69 option. Further on, you can set up if this power alarm has a tilt back. So this 70% PWM alarm, really cool. And then one feature that is also not available on other wheels is this pedal turning angle adjustment. I leave it at 3, but essentially what it is when you turn with the wheel, the pedals just will stay flat. But you can also set up that the pedals will go up if you turn, or down. And this is really useful if you want to do shifties on your wheel whips, or if you do racing, you don't want your pedals to go down all that much, or if you want to have them go down, you can just adjust it. And it's still the only wheel that has that option, which gives me a bit more of a reason to call it a hyper wheel. Now, the horizontal adjustment is still the most probably annoying thing to me about the app, because the wheel doesn't remember what horizontal adjustment you have set up in your app. So once you turn on and off the wheel, then it will forget how you set up the angle of the wheel to be. Super frustrating, but at least you can set up the angle here. It's also not as precise as Veteran. There you can just set up in decimal increments. I hope they improve it in the future. Then you also have a operating mode. Off-road is more stiff. It's I guess more torquey, and racing is more designed for race mode. Just take into account that the wheel will turn off once you change the modes. For a first-time user, it could be a surprise. Then you have a maximum speed reminder, which is a beep. Here I have it at 90 kilometers an hour. And you have just 2 LED settings, but you have 9 options, but just 2 of them work. Essentially, it's just the taillight. It either stays red or it stays like blue when it's stationary. As simple as that. You can set up the volume of the beeper, which is cool. Make it quiet, make it loud, whatever you prefer. One thing that was slightly annoying to me is that one day I was going on a very long trip. I did 145 kilometers with charging in between, and I had the battery level at 20%, and it would just like beep for me for 10 kilometers. I believe they changed that in the meantime. I was giving them feedback about that, but just a small thing to keep in mind. Now, further on, you can have the maximum tilt angle. I don't really know why the setting is still here, because you can set up the angle on with the degrees. I'm not sure if that works, how it works. Maybe someone can educate me on that. You can calibrate the wheel, check your mileage statistics. You have your units, and finally you have your battery information, which is super important. Yes, this wheel has a smart BMS. It will show you errors if something's wrong with the battery. It shows you the voltages of individual cell sets, shows you if it's charging, it shows you how many amps you're charging with, the power draw. It is very, very awesome to have this feature, and for me, it's a deal breaker if a performance wheel for such a price wouldn't have a smart BMS. So much about the app. Let's get back to the wheel. Now, with all of that said, what is my sort of final statement about this wheel? What is my consensus on the Begode Blitz? And of course, we have to keep the price in mind here. This wheel costs €3,500 as it is for now, which places it at sort of the higher end of the market, but still not as viciously expensive as the veteran Lynx. And for that money, you're getting the most advanced, the most hyper, the most, crazy UC product that also has durability and safety baked into it. Is it a lot of money? For sure. Is it worth it? It's it's always hard to tell. I can also tell you just, get a bicycle if you want to go to work and back. There's different options that you could take instead of the Begode Blitz. There's the Begode Extreme, which is now a lot cheaper compared to this. It's like 2.9 thousand euros. And there you also have the pads right in the box, but it will be heavier. But if you want to have the most non plus ultra, the biggest sort of amount of performance that you can get with the durability and safety that goes along with it, then the Begode Blitz is that. When it comes to commuting, it has some drawbacks like the trolley handle and well, that's basically it. And maybe not the most fluent ride, but it makes up for it with the lesser weight and the bigger suspension travel. So even so, for commuting, I think that taking into account all the compromises, the great front light compared to the pretty annoying front light on the Lynx, the awesome pedals, the kickstand, the Mudguard, the suspension, the power, the weight, it still comes out as a great commuter wheel, but with a higher price tag. When it comes to performance-oriented riders, I can't recommend anything else, honestly, at this point. The difference in weight is tremendous. I feel like I'm flying on this wheel. And if you met me here in Warsaw while I'm testing this wheel, you would just have me smiling from ear to ear when I'm riding this wheel. I'm constantly in awe how much this wheel can do. And this opens up so many more possibilities for my skill to evolve safely. Because while I was trying to do big jumps on the Lynx, I know that I was reaching a limit where it's not safe anymore. And then I did the same jumps on the Blitz and I'm just popping, I'm flying, I'm taking off. I'm, reaching new levels of what's possible for me on an electric unicycle. And while I initially thought it will not deliver in the torque segment, it does. It certainly does. Maybe you need to lean a little more into it. Maybe you need to push a little more into the pads. It grunts more when you're doing off-road, but it will wheel spin and go up. This wheel literally was the only wheel that cleared a sandy incline going up a hill. No wheel ever has done that before, and I did it on a second try on the Begode Blitz. Whoa! It's the first time ever! I never got up here on any wheel! Look at... Wow! This is just... Ah! Alright, we'll see how steep it is. You see, it's just sand essentially. Like 35-degree steepness. Here more. Here 47. But mostly like 30 degrees in sand. That's crazy. No wheel went up here before. Okay, I think I can retire. Just riding this now. Anything I throw at it, it delivers. So if you're looking for a performance wheel, look no further, because the Begode Blitz is the performance wheel and is the most hyper wheel I've ever ridden. So with that said, if you're still here, I'm going crazy. Maybe you're going crazy too. Let me know in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe to see more content like this. I'll see you, baby, in the next video. Woo! See you soon. Long video.